Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We're digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave. We'd love to know where you think we got it right and where we just don't know what we're talking about. You can do that by visiting unsilentpodcast.com or our Rumble channel or any place on social media where people go to sing Kumbaya together these days. So, Brian, another week. I think that we're sort of out of danger because the government has shut down.
Yeah.
So, at least they can't do too much harm for a little while or a little bit,
Yeah. And it's so funny on the news. Like it's like 23 hours a day of talking about the government shutting down.
Right.
I don't know a single person that cares.
No.
No. Now, if you're a federal employee and you get paid every 2 weeks and it went on for a month or something,
Sure.
okay, it would start having an impact. But short of that minor carve out of the populace, I don't know a single person that cares.
Unless you want to go to a national park. Other than that, probably not. I mean, and the funny thing about this whole government shutdown idea is to hear people talk about it, on the news and other places. It's like, the entire apparatus of the United States is completely shut down, whereas almost all the spending and almost all of the functions continue unabated during a government shutdown, because the only thing that shuts down is the things that are discretionary. And 90 some odd percent of our budget and the work is mandatory. So so security's still going to go out. I mean, they're going to furlough a bunch of people, and so stuff's going to be shorter or longer time frames to get responses from bureaucrats.
Yeah.
I could say something about that, but
slower response time. I mean, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they just park all the battleships and aircraft carriers and say, okay, go home, everybody, and watch Netflix. It's not how it works.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Elon Musk said a couple of years ago, like he was being interviewed by somebody, and he said something about like a personal assistant or somebody, a direct report of his, asked for a raise, and he said, "I'll tell you what, why don't you take 2 weeks off, and I'll see how much I miss you, and then we'll talk about your raise," right?
Yeah,
exactly. And it reminds me that about the government, like, okay, except for if there was some kind of group of people, a country invaded us or something like that. Short of that,
right?
If the government 100% shut down for 2 weeks, would we give them a raise, Dave?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think the answer to that is clearly no. I mean, how many of these people, how many functions that the federal government performs, one, are constitutionally mandated, and there's not that many of them, and two, are really necessary for. I heard on I was listening, I think it was the Economist podcast, and they were bemoaning the fact that the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, wasn't going to be reporting for the period of the government shutdown on statistics. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, I like statistics, but is it really a crisis that we don't know the labor payroll for the next 2 weeks? I mean, I don't know.
And I would argue that it's a toss up between what's worse, no data and bad data. The BLS specifically has had to revise 11 of the last 14 or 12, whatever the numbers are. It's a significant percentage of their monthly statistics they've had to revise in meaningful ways, not minor little things.
Yeah, like 200,000 jobs or something ridiculous.
Right. I'm really going to miss that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, well, I had a bit of an epiphany this week. So for the government shut down, that wasn't it. But I had a bit of an epiphany this week. I had been kind of operating under the pretense that the hardcore progressives really just didn't get what we cared about. But I was proven wrong this week. I'm gonna share this little video here. It's pretty short. I'm gonna share a video to you where I was not only proven wrong, but I was proving astoundingly wrong. So let me just play this video clip for you. Yeah. So this is Joy Reid. You'll know who she is, I'm sure.
Luminary, yes.
play this for you, and it's about 19 seconds here.
Is that if you go back before the 20th century, there were no income taxes, there were no regulations on business. You could earn as much money as you want, leave 100% of it to your children with no taxes. Right. That's the world they want back. And to get it back, they need society to change. They need people to be less modern. They need people to want fewer things. Is that if you...
So I clearly kind of articulated we want to earn as much money as we want. Yeah.
And but she did accuse us of something, Brian, you got to admit, she did accuse us of a crime against humanity. We want to leave it to our children.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's clearly the definition, the very definition of modern evil. I want to leave an inheritance to my children. That's, the horror of it all, right?
Less regulation. They want to earn, keep what they earn. Like, I heard that and I was like, wait a second. No, she actually can articulate our point. That was revolutionary, or it was an epiphany for me. I didn't think that they understood. I'm not even being funny. I'm being serious. I didn't think that she understood, like a person like her even could articulate what it is that we're kind of arguing about. And this, I mean, there's many others, but this is, she kind of got it.
Well, she did. And now a good interviewer would have said, okay, well, what does that actually mean then? Would have asked the follow-up question. Well, what kind of, horrific genocidal thing will happen if you get to keep more of what you earn, more of what you spend your life energy on? What kind of horrific, malefactor of evil will take place if this happens? And that question didn't get asked, of course.
And also, okay, if we're going to extract this money from people, which is what we're doing, we're extracting dollars from people,
right?
What should they get for that, other than the righteousness of giving their money to the cause?
Right. Yeah, it's just and I guess that's the part that really just is so annoying is the lack of the ability to take a thought completely forward and say, here is what this thought means to society, to individuals, etc. And then of course the question comes of, well, who's better equipped to righteously, shall we say, spend the money that I earn? Am I better equipped to do that? And do I bring more benefit into the world if I make that choice, or does a government bureaucrat bring more benefit into the world if they take a $200,000 a year salary to determine what to do with my income?
Well, I suspect it has to do with you, with whether or not you listen to Milton Friedman or Joy Reid.
Well, there you go.
They would have different. At least Milton Friedman could explain the 4 different criteria of how people spend money and why it doesn't make sense for a government bureaucrat who's spending somebody else's money and getting lower quality and not caring about the outcomes and all that stuff. And I don't want to turn this into a Milton Friedman seminar, but anyhow, so I thought that was kind of fascinating. That kind of caught me a little bit off guard, quite honestly. Then something that actually kind of shocked me. I'm gonna play a few different video clips today. This next one, I didn't think this was possible, but it apparently is. This is from the UK or Britain. I'm not sure which is grammatically correct, so forgive my lack of geographical knowledge there. But here's the guy over there talking.
And that is why today I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
Okay, so this opens up a whole cluster of questions I have. But before we get to the questions I have, as far as, application and other consequences, and, if that was our goal, is people who aren't from here to work here or whatever, like, why don't we just do that now? There's, basic questions like that. But did this surprise you, this announcement? This has been pretty good headlines. So I'm sure you saw it.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Because this is the thing that we've been told here, and I'm sure across the pond as well, is the very center of racism, bigotry, and oppression of the poor is asking somebody for an ID to take advantage of their legal right to vote. So
Yeah.
yes, that is it is surprising to hear that about face, and to hear it in such a, I mean, I've heard that clip before. He's pretty bold about it. He's pretty strong about it. I mean,
Yeah.
in the US, he would be accused of being a racist for saying that, because we've been talking about voter ID might be a good idea for a long time, and we're told that that's going to inconvenience, or it's going to what's the word? It's going to suppress the vote, and all
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff. Disenfranchise. That's the word I'm looking for. Disenfranchise all the people. So yes, it is surprising. On the other hand, it's not surprising because Keir Starmer is not an idiot. He's part of the Labor Party, which may sort of mitigates my previous statement just a little bit, but he's not an idiot. He sees that, I mean, Brits are out in the streets of London protesting. They're filling up the streets, and they've just kind of had it up to their eyeballs with all of the the problems with unrestrained immigration. I mean, I'm sure Keir Starmer would say that he's still very pro-immigration, all that kind of stuff, but he's got to do something, or else Nigel Farage is going to be the next PM. I mean, that's
Well, I think that, and you're gonna know way more about this than I do. I don't pay attention to geopolitical stuff like this all that much. Other than this struck me because I thought we'd face this later on. I didn't think it'd be somewhere in a prominent country like there
yeah.
now. That's the part that kind of shocked me.
Well,
I don't believe that they can do a quick pivot here and say, yeah, well, we didn't like those kinds of IDs, but this kind of ID is different and better because
sure.
of fill in whatever excuse they have, and now they're off to the races.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have to do any kind of linguistic gymnastics to figure out how to make it make sense from their perspective. I don't think that
Right.
they're beholden to the same kind of standards you and I are.
Well, they wouldn't care. I mean, the bottom line, I
Right.
mean, part of implicit in what you're saying is that there'd have to be some connection with reality in their previous statements. But there doesn't need to be any
Right.
connection with reality and their previous statements at all. It's just like, no, we've always believed this. This has always been our position.
Yeah.
Gaslighting is the favorite sport of the left.
Yeah. You can go back to 1996 and hear Hillary Clinton talk about how important IDs. I mean,
Right.
of course, they could do all that kind of stuff. But what's the real angle here? So there's only two options. Either one, he believes in this and they are pushing it for a reason, or two, he doesn't believe it and he's saying this and he's going to compromise on something else. That seems to be like the only two outcomes. So which do you think it is?
Well, there's no question it's political expediency. There's absolutely no question it's political expediency, because he sees that labor is terribly unpopular. He's still pretty new as a PM in Britain. He's not, he hasn't been there for years and years. He's not like a Tony Blair figure or even a Boris Johnson figure for that matter. So it's definitely political expediency. He's definitely trying to stem the tide of one of the two right-wing parties taking parliament back in very short order. So it's definitely political expediency. Now, I am also of the opinion that people like him and others that are smart people in even in labor know that things like unrestrained illegal immigration is bad for the country. I mean, they have to know it. I think that they might not have as deep a connection to it, for instance, as we have, or may they be part of the Tories, but they have to know that the rape gangs and all these different things that have gone. And the only reason I think they don't tack a little bit towards the center left and they've stayed on the far left is because it's the only way they can get elected in a country like Britain. But that
I see. So
changes now.
you have a completely different perspective on this than I do. My thought was, oh, this is just the first step of getting a central bank digital currency. What you're saying, I'm hearing you say is this is like a legitimate immigration restriction policy.
Sure. Yes, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. I think
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, well, but I think it can be both too, because certainly the CDBC is something that all central bankers want because they hate Bitcoin because it's out of their control, and
And cash. Yeah.
yeah, and especially because if the and that gets us into a little bit of a different topic of stable coins backed by treasury bond, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I do think it is. I think the first and foremost thing is their response to, and his response in particular, to the massive wave, and we talked about this last week, the overwhelming, wave of anti-immigration sentiment among your average Briton. I mean, that was, you just don't see Britons marching in the streets like you do in France or in San Francisco. I think that's the big driver behind all of this.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess time will tell. My thought was this was kind of a Trojan horse to say, "Oh, you guys care about immigration? Well, of course, let's do this thing." But the real intent would be a segue into a CBDC of some sort and connecting the digital ID to the CBDC, and then
Sure.
once they have that, like that's checkmate. I mean, you can't function in that society outside of the government's permission.
Right, without the card. Yeah, exactly.
With if you violate whatever social conduct rule or you don't check in where you're supposed to, you can't access your bank and all that kind of, like, it feels like it's kind of checkmate there. That was where I thought this was going. You're presenting a whole different idea, which is this is a legitimate thing to appease the people who are pissed about the immigration thing.
Yeah. I think both of those things are true. I do think the primary driver is the riots in London and the big upwelling, and the fact that Keir Starmer is very unpopular. I mean, he was supposed to do stuff, and he's come in as a milquetoast technocrat. So this gets a little bit into British politics, which is
Yeah.
but he's fighting for his political life, and so this is a way to sort of tack back to the center and maybe pull off some of the people that would have otherwise joined the reform or any of these other parties that are popping up.
Are they more conservative folks there, like Nigel Farage and all those guys? Are they on board with this?
Oh, you mean with the I don't know whether they are or not, actually. I don't know whether, I mean, they
I
are.
saw Boris Johnson put a thing up that he would be one of the people who would not go along with it.
Yeah, and Boris Johnson is, he is a bureaucrat kind of guy. He's not like, I mean, he's a bureaucrat and a party animal, basically.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what got him.
Yeah, he's a bureaucrat because he was a party animal.
Because he's a party animal. Yeah, that got him. Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's got him invited to all the right parties.
Yeah.
And there's Elon Musk's new buddy over there that he thinks is that formed a brand new party. I don't even remember what it's called now, but so the Britain's in a whole world of upheaval and turmoil, and it's really about immigration. I mean, it's basically what got Trump elected. Same thing's happening there.
Yeah, yeah. It's man. For Kenny G in the future, the guy we're talking to 70 years from now, who's going to look back and wonder what was wrong with us. It does feel like it's not as neat as immigration. I don't know anybody who's anti-immigration. Like, I don't know a single person who's anti-immigration. No. I know tons of people who are anti-illegal immigration, where the immigrants come here and don't want to assimilate to our values and want us to change their values, and also they get paid along the way. Is the part. Yeah. That's the part that I think that is the sticking point for most folks I know.
And to put even a finer point on that sticking point, in Britain and in the U.S., the left in both countries has gone so far as to say, no, you can't be talking about rape gangs. You can't be talking about criminal illegals, because if you talk about criminal illegals, you're going to sweep in all the other innocent illegals, and that makes you a racist, bigot, homophobe, whatever. So it's not just even the that one thing. It's the outrage on the extremes. It's just like the transgender issue was one where it's like, well, there weren't a lot of people against transgender people until the outrage of girls getting hurt in sports and getting their medals taken away, and getting their faces bashed in by volleyballs with
Or
big
just having to change in a locker room with a dude, just simple, what we wouldn't call obscene 25 years ago,
right, exactly,
just being now touted as the way, of course, is the way it should be.
Yeah, and so it takes something pretty extreme, but to activate people, and then when they get activated, then it moves towards the more center issue. So it's like it moves from criminal illegals and rape gangs in all these different cities in Britain, all the way over to no, you can't work without a work permit, and here's our new card and all this kind of stuff. So that's just kind of how the sociological piece works. I'm not a sociologist, but I just observed that that's the way it's worked there and here.
Yeah. All right. Well, shifting gears one more time, I got a third thing to share with you here that kind of caught my eye. Again, we're kind of video heavy on this one, but this is our buddy Gavin Newsom.
Ah, yes.
And this clip just struck me, just his demeanor, his tone, his body language, like all of that is what really struck me here. So, oops, let me make sure I hit the right buttons here. I gotta make sure. Okay, it's on. I gotta make sure the sound is turned on. Sorry about the delay there. Okay, so here's a recent 15-second clip of our buddy Gavin Newsom.
I fear that we will not have an election in 2028. I really mean that in the core of my soul, unless we wake up to the code red, what's happening in this country, and we wake up soberly to how serious this moment is.
All right, so the words he's saying, I'm or the topic I'm not really so much interested in. What struck me when I saw that was, imagine it's 1859 and you're watching, and you somehow had the ability to watch a videotape of Jefferson Davis making a statement.
Mm-hmm.
How much different do you think it would look than that? Like the urgency, and what we have to recognize is how we're at this, I firmly believe this existential threat is going to happen if we don't recognize the code red moment. We're in, like the tone, the posture, the body language, how he looks. He kind of looks like he could be a descendant of Jefferson Davis.
Yeah, he sure does.
I don't know. Am I overreaching there, Dave? But I mean, it just seems to me like if you could find a clip, like a video clip of Jefferson Davis making a speech back then, I can't imagine it would have looked any different in as far as his posture, his strong gesturing, and the words, and again, whatever the topic is, like the existential threat of the southern states' economic viability. Something like that. Okay, so insert that topic. Would it have looked any different than what we just saw?
No, not at all. I mean, because it's a fully hyperbolic, fully code red. I mean, that's about as top as you can. That's about as over the top, I think, as you can get.
Yeah. There's not DEFCON's -2. It's a 1.
Well, and I mean and of course it's a dangerous set of statements, both in 1859 and now, when you use that kind of terminology, because people are, as we can see all around us now, people are willing to take matters into their own hands in service of those ideals and do unspeakable, horrible things. I mean, we've been seeing that just so regularly. So yeah, no, I think it's the same thing.
And what I'm kind of setting up here is, it feels to me, again, maybe I'm reading too much into this, and maybe I'm using history as too much of a guide here, but wouldn't this be the kind of thing you would say if your goal in 6 or 12 or 18 months was for California to secede from the United States?
Yeah, well, this is the kind of thing you would say for whatever the most extreme action you can take is. So whatever the most extreme action, secession, or armed resistance to ICE coming in, our police versus your police, feds versus, I mean, all of that kind of stuff. That's the kind of You know, because there's no other level of hyperbole. There's nothing above it. You know, Trump's not going to go away. He's going to be perpetual. He's going to be like Xi Jinping, and you know that's the end of
Yeah.
that. I mean, how do you respond to that? What do you do? I mean, there's no way other than armed rebellion to, prevent that. You're not going to prevent that with an act of Congress, right?
Right. But it feels like they're kind of, or he specifically, not they, he specifically is kind of painting himself into a corner here where, other than escalation, what else could you do from here?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and I'm being dead serious. Okay, so yeah, he can raise some more money. He can run for president. I assume both those things would likely be. I assume those two things are going to happen.
Sure.
But if that's not enough, you can't go
else.
from where he's at now and say, okay, well, I've decided to try to negotiate our way out of this, and I think we need to find the hegemony that we once had. There's no path to that from where he's at.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a path to we win the election by whatever means necessary, or we have to take other extreme measures. There's not a path from where his posture and gestures and language to we work it all out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know. Yeah, there is no. It's really hard to walk back and when you talk about language like fascist dictator, he's not going to leave office. It's really hard to walk all that back and say, well, yeah, it didn't turn out to be quite as bad as I thought. He's not quite the fascist. I mean, you'll have no credibility left, and you'll have no base left either at that point.
Right.
I think part of his motivation is that he doesn't see a path that doesn't involve his base, and his base is a significant portion of his base is upset with him because he did things like meet with Charlie Kirk. He committed a blasphemy by meeting with Charlie Kirk, and saying things he said about the religious issue of the day for the left, which is transgenderism.
Yeah.
So, I think all that's true. And I think, yes, it's really hard, if not impossible, to walk that back at any time. The only way around that would be if there's, I mean, we live in a society these days where there's such little connection with what happened yesterday. I mean, the 24/7 news cycle is like, well, what happened Wednesday of last week? If it's not in the news now, then it didn't happen. It didn't occur. So, the names that we thought of 3 months ago are not on our mind anymore because we're on to the newest outrage, right? So I could maybe see that, but other than that, no, you're exactly right.
I think the one of the ironies of that is let's say Washington, Oregon, and Washington broke off, because on the West Coast it would be those three probably. I don't think Nevada would go. I do think those three states would go, and whether they become the Western states of America, I don't know how you would do it geographically and as far as security, like how you would do the West Coast and Illinois and New York and like the Eastern Seaboard. I don't know. That seems to be kind of, they would have to be like separate. I don't know how you would pull that off where you unified all the, I mean, they would have certainly like economic arrangements. I'm sure all that would happen, but I don't know how you would do it geographically, but people smarter than me would figure it out probably. But anyhow, let's just say that those three broke off. One of the ironies is during COVID, those are three states that the governors kept their executive emergency powers longer than all the states that vote in the direction they don't like, who are supporting the quote unquote fascists in place.
That's there you go, pointing out inconsistencies again. Yeah, no, that I hadn't thought of that. That's exactly right. If there's anything that's dictatorial, it's keeping emergency powers like Emperor Palpatine. Who says he's going to, I'll let these emergency powers that you give me pass as soon as the crisis is over. Well, there you go. That's what all, I think Jay Inslee was the one that kept them the longest of all of them.
Over 1,000 days, wasn't it?
Yeah. Must be nice.
So he was the governor of Washington, and presumably his state would break off, your state would break off to fight fascism. And I would argue one of the indicators that somebody has fascistic, whatever that word is, tendencies would be to keep those emergency powers far longer than peers did in the same circumstances. And I think like Tennessee and Missouri and some of these quote unquote red states, their governors gave them up after, a few months.
Oh yeah.
Inslee kept him for over 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, well, Florida reopened very quickly in comparison with us out here in the West. And yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so, yeah, if there is any tendency towards dictatorial powers or centralized control, it certainly hasn't been on the right as much as it has been on the left. There's no doubt.
Well, those are the things that caught my eye this week, Dave. What do you got? What do you want to talk about? You always have the headier, more ethereal topics than I do. I always have the goofball kind of things, but
well, one of the interesting pieces of news this week was that in true misogynistic form, the Charlie Kirk show was run by Megyn Kelly and by Erica Kirk, and two women, and got over 1 billion apparently views. So apparently, misogynistic tendencies are alive and well with shows that are dominated only by women. So
yeah,
I'm not 100% sure exactly how that works.
What's the right vernacular for female Uncle Tom? What's the is there an Uncle?
There's
or is there an Aunt Tabitha? Is there a female version?
there must be something. I don't quite know what it is, but
well, we got to come up with something, Dave. We got to come up with something and trademark it, and then make our fortune presenting ourselves on Blue Sky.
Yeah. Oh, Blue Sky. Yes, Blue Sky. The hub of intellectual curiosity in the United States and the world these days on Blue Sky. So there is that. You know what? I will tell you one of the other things that's interesting too. I listen to, because I'm just a geek. I listen to a variety of things where folks are talking about international relations, foreign relations, and the global order and all of these kinds of things. And I've listened to several podcasts this week by people who are experts in foreign relations and foreign affairs and all that stuff. And the fascinating thing one of the fascinating things to me is that there's so many people who recognize, on one hand, this sort of fourth turning era that we're in, but who believe and who are hoped for and who are working towards a return to the global order and to normalcy as it existed before. There is, I think, both even potentially on the right, but certainly on the left, this belief that after Trump goes, that's the end of Trumpism and that's the end of populism, and all these other nations of the world that are becoming populist, and everything that's happening in Britain and in Argentina and all these other places, it'll all just kind of fade into history and we'll go back to normal. I think there is and so I think there is a very, very big shock coming to a whole bunch of folks that are the smart people, the intelligentsia around this stuff, when whatever comes next after Trump doesn't turn out to be a return to normal, doesn't return to now there were a number of things that were very good about the previous global order, but the some of the stuff where some of our relations with other nations in many ways were better, but we're not going back to that. We're not going back to how it used to be. And until people start to sort of wrap their head around that we're in the last death throes of that globalist order and moving into this new sort of either spheres of influence or individual nationalist orders with transactional interactions between other countries, until folks kind of get that through their head that this is what's going to be normal for the foreseeable future, then I think we're going to have some. I think that does sort of portend the unraveling of a lot of different institutions that are still sort of hanging on by the claws.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting that this is always the we always want what we don't have, and we always feel more confident what we knew. How things were. Even if we didn't like it, we at least understood. We believed we understood it better, and we had a more probably inaccurate degree of certainty about how things worked, and even if we're completely wrong, like we believe that at least we knew the rules of the game. Like we went from playing Monopoly to Yahtzee, and I've never played Yahtzee before. At least even if I sucked at Monopoly, I understood the rules and I knew how the game worked. Right. I agree with you. I don't think it ever quote unquote goes back.
No. Well, but we do plan for the past. I mean, see I think the problem for all of us, for individuals, we're sort of wired that way, and nations and institutions are wired that way to think that the future is going to be a derivative of the past. Now, the future can have echoes of the past and rhymes of the past, and the future is certainly influenced by the past. There's no question that it's not just draw a line in the sand and this is completely different from that. So there is a progression, to be sure, but but I think one of the most dangerous pieces of the time that we are in right now is the unpreparedness of people for what this new future really looks like, and how we cannot, like, I'll give you an example. I think we've talked about this before. So China, as it produces so much of what the United States needs. I mean, they can outproduce us about 230 times in shipbuilding. I mean, so their shipbuilding capacity, their ability to produce medicines that we need to survive is, we are dependent on them. So, a war over Taiwan is probably one that if it goes more than about a week, we're not going to win. We're just not going to win. I mean, we got better stuff, but they got 10 times the stuff, 10 times this stuff versus one good stuff. Well, that could be that's not a fight you really want to get into. So, and you just go down the line, industrial capacity. So, because I'm very concerned about China and what we're planning on. So the president wants to bring back manufacturing to the United States of semiconductors, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing. So Taiwan Semiconductor is coming over to the United States to try and spin up some plants here and make some investments here. But you know what the biggest problem TSMC says they have when they come to the United States? The biggest problem that they find is that we don't know how to do it.
Yeah, labor.
We don't have the expertise. We don't have the expertise to build semiconductors.
Yeah, one of those plants is like 8 miles from my house. And I'm never going to sell this house because it'll be a great rental, because they're going to have 10 or 30,000 new jobs there. So
absolutely,
when I move into my retirement house, and I will be keeping this one because we're a short commute away from that plant. And I think that they just announced some kind of expansion, and they're not even done building the thing, and they've already announced a pretty big expansion there. But they I think the way it works, if I heard correctly, they bring people in for 6 months at a time on these work visas, right? Well, part of the problem is to train group. So group A is here and group B is coming in. It takes a month or 6 weeks to train group B on how to do the thing that group A has been doing.
Right.
And then there's prep time for that, all that stuff. So you lose, 20% or whatever the math is, you lose 6 weeks out of every 26, 25% or whatever of production time in training the new lot of people how to do what the old lot had been doing for the last 4.5 months since they got trained.
Exactly.
And so it's wildly inefficient to bring people here, and the people here don't know how to do this stuff.
Well, and so as Americans, I mean, I like to think of American ingenuity and American productiveness, and we're go-getters, and we are all of those things. We are all of those things. We won, World War II to a great extent because we had industrial capacity, and because we had, we could just kick out ships and planes and tanks that like there's no tomorrow. So we could outproduce the Axis powers. But today we're in a situation where we have this belief in our own World War II kind of persona, but we just don't have all of those things that we had at that time. And so for instance, I'm very pleased that the president is getting, chip plants built here, foundries built here. Let's spin up Intel's foundry plant so it can build semiconductors properly in the US. All that stuff is very good. I'm glad we're doing it. But we also need to face the reality of we got some big hills to climb if we're going to if we're going to make it through the fourth turning crisis that's coming down the road. I mean, if you're in a situation where you've got another spin on this, if you have a situation, for instance, where the majority of your population is living much, much longer. And therefore, as we get into our 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, we need a lot more medicine. And most of that medicine, a good chunk of that medicine, comes from China. And China says, oh, you're not going to do this for us? Huh. I guess those medicines that all of your old people need aren't coming for a few weeks. How's that going to work for you? I mean, there's some serious existential threats that are on the horizon that I think to a great extent Americans we blind ourselves to. Now hope China's got plenty of problems on their own. I mean, they got plenty of difficulties on their own, and being a one-man dictatorship of 1.4 billion people is probably pretty hard to manage. I mean, it's that's probably pretty tough. So they got their own troubles, but I do think we're in a real bind near the end of this fourth turning on just even those accounts.
Yeah, as you were talking, I pulled up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because what occurred to me is, and you and I know from working with business owners who have like virtual assistants in the Philippines and things like that, is those people that are VAs, virtual assistants, are very good at the procedural stuff, which is kind of in alignment with that, like manufacturing and like I do a thing and whatever. As our society has had the privilege of being the dominant superpower for at least 30 years, arguably 50 years, but for sure at least 30 years, right? As we go through the hierarchy of needs, the priorities change. So in the beginning, you got physiological, food, water, shelter, sex, that kind of thing. Then you got safety. Food, water, sex, then safety, shelter, that kind of stuff. Then social, then self-esteem, and then self-actualization is the top. Right. Well, if you look at like in the business world over the last few years, what the most successful people that everybody idolizes are, Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, these guys who are true visionaries, and they're at that self-actualization level. They had the vision of doing the things, but they couldn't go put the screws in the phone to save their life, probably, right? Now, Elon Musk is maybe an anomaly there, but my point is, making it in the U.S. today is being creative and having this grand vision and changing the world in some way. Where making it in 1947 was you had a job that you kept for 45 years putting tires on Kenworth trucks. Right.
Yeah.
Those societies that you're talking about still have that. They don't have the benefits we do that allow their brain to go into this more self-actualization mode, maybe. And again, I'm not a behavioral scientist or a sociologist. I don't know. I'm talking out of my butt right now. But it seems that this kind of fits with how our society has evolved from, we don't want to be the people making medicine. We want to be the people creating the next iPhone. So don't bother me with that stuff. But you're right. We still have the same ego and pride based as if we could do those shipbuilding things and do the production stuff, measuring mistakes in parts per million or parts per billion instead of parts per dozen,
And if existential crises happen, if kinetic crises happen, whether they're natural disasters or whether they're wars or civil unrest or those types of things, then the idea people, I mean, I work in an idea realm, you work in an idea realm, that's what we do for a living. If we can't get out there and change a tire, then all of our management ideas aren't going to really do a whole lot to keep the family fed. So I think there's that particular threat is a very fourth turning threat, and it does surprise me though. I was thinking about this week. It does surprise me that we blithely walked into outsourcing all of these things that we know. You can ask anybody. Yeah, you got to have medicine, and if somebody who doesn't like you has a monopoly on all the medicines you need to survive, somebody who's got polar opposite of your belief system, that's probably not the best thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not rocket science. You don't have to be Einstein to sort through that one, right? I mean, it's pretty
Right.
straightforward. So how we actually, got so full of ourselves, so prideful that we said, well, we'll just use China as long as we need them, and then when we don't need them anymore, we'll do something different, or they'll always
Well,
need.
that arrogance and narcissism and hubris that you're talking about leads to the risk reward calculus changing.
Yeah.
Well, of course, no, of course, somebody's gonna mess with us. Of course, we can trust them because like, we're the United States of America, for crying out loud.
Right.
They wouldn't fill in the blank. They wouldn't stop our medical shipments. And
Right.
you know what? For a while, they were right.
Yep.
I don't know if that's true anymore.
Yeah. I think
But
do think
our
that's
hubris and our arrogance has not come back down to from the far out atmosphere back to reality enough for us to have that awakening. And maybe that's what the fourth turning is
yeah.
the abrupt reshuffling of the risk reward calculus.
Well, and to a great extent, that's what happened with Britain. That's when Britain went from being an empire to the downward slide to where they're at today. They basically the industrial revolution made Britain an empire, made Britain a
Yeah.
global empire. And there was an opportunity. I mean, the Brits were in India and a lot of other places, but they thought, no, we're not going to mobilize our colonies and really train them up to be these productive engines like we are. We're going to kind of keep them in their. I'm not going down a colonialist road here, but
Yeah.
the point is that Britain took advantage of their first turning in their industrial revolution and became the global hegemony that they were, just like we did. We replaced them essentially, and now the question for us is that going to happen again? There's an old book.
Yeah.
There's an old Greek. It's called the Thucydides trap. It's I don't know if you've heard of that before, but it's the idea. Okay.
No.
Well,
They didn't teach that where I went to school.
okay, well, yeah, they didn't teach it at Lakeside either. I just learned it after there. But the idea behind the Thucydides trap is you've got a dominant power, and then you've got an emerging power. The Thucydides trap is the idea that the dominant power thinks it's always going to be dominant, makes some mistakes, and it becomes a waning power. That's what happened in Great Britain, and that's what it sort of looks like we're on the verge of here in the United States. Unless
there's I can't remember his name. There's a ultra deca billionaire Wall Street guy who's kind of shifted gears in late life, and he's warning of that we are the waning power.
Yeah.
And China is the emerging power. And when those trajectories cross, like you're saying, that his prediction, that his belief is that's when conflict is most likely to happen, and
Yes.
we're pretty close to that cross. I can't remember his name now, but so let me ask you a question. So in hindsight, it'll be crystal clear, but it's not crystal clear if something like that were to happen. There was some kind of global conflict, 10 years ago, the new axis of evil was going to be Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia. If I got that correct, that was going to be the new axis of evil.
Right.
And then the Western world would it'd be like they just kind of took a copy and paste mode with like World War II. Like, okay, well, you had Italy and Germany and Japan and I don't know, there was another country in there somewhere. It'll be like that again, and then everybody else against those guys. And that's kind of what the prevailing thought was, 10, 15 years ago. And again, in hindsight, if it were to go down, like it'll all be crystal clear in Kenny G's time, 70 years from now. But I don't have real clarity on who our true allies would be now. Okay, so yeah, you've got Australia and you've got Britain and you got France and you got Germany, these things that are quote unquote Western countries. I don't think their governments are, though. I don't think their governments are all that much into Western values. Certainly not free markets and free expression and all the things that would be the hallmarks of Western civilization. So there's allies on, like, we so far have had agreements. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody had to send troops to defend the United States, do we have any allies?
Well, see, this is where I think this is where it gets down to kind of mercenary, what I would call like mercenary alliances. In other words, what you said is true. So like Australia is very much more controlling They've got dramatic gun control. They're very much a compliant society.
They literally had camps for people who would not get vaccinated. They literally had like places, housing that people lost their everything to go be stuck in a box because they wouldn't get a vaccine.
Right. So there's a bunch of in France. There's a bunch of nations across in the Western sort of sphere of influence, if you will, that don't share our values the way that like you and I would define our values.
Yeah.
However, what I think happens is when you're faced with they share less of China's values, though. See, this is the thing.
Okay.
This is the thing that bodes well for us, because if you take the Western countries, Australia is scared to death of China. They know they have to work with them because they're in the back. That's their neighborhood. Just like a lot of the the Philippines, South Korea, a lot of these places, they can't just
deal with them for sure. I don't know how much they want to work with. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to deal with them because they're the big dog in the neighborhood.
Yep.
And we're the big dog very far away from the neighborhood. But at the end of the day, if you take Europe and Australia, Canada, some of the Asian nations, and you put these nations, the things that they do share in common together, we outproduce China on manufacturing, on military, on every China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. We outproduce them by leaps and bounds now, and probably will for the foreseeable future, if those countries can get together and recognize the threat that that if China exports their system. Now, it's one thing if China exports their stuff. Everybody wants China to export their stuff, right? Because they make lots and lots. They got a great manufacturing capacity, make a lot of good stuff. They got the dominant car manufacturing in the world. They can make better electric cars than Tesla does. That's just what auto experts say, and they challenge us in. They're not just stealing our stuff anymore. They stole our stuff for a long time. Now they're actually good at creating their own stuff. But all of that's said, if the existential threat does come down to those systems versus a more westernized system, then I do think there's a great chance that if all of the Western idealed countries can get together, that will put aside some of these other differences. And just like we did, look at what we did in World War II. We put aside our differences with Joseph Stalin.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It comes down
I guess what I'm thinking back to remarks by, and I'm going to butcher my paraphrasing here, but Justin Trudeau, 5-6 years ago, whenever it was, he was kind of caught in the situation. I don't know if he knew he was being recorded. He was talking to a group of business owners, I think, and I say business owners, I mean like Wall Street, that kind of, the big, and I could be getting even that part wrong, but essentially he said something like, China sure knows how to get things done. And I'm envious that China has the ability to get things done.
Yeah.
I guess I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the digital ID, the CBDC. That's a big like the folks in Davos. That group.
Yeah,
it's hard for me to believe that they would really not want that way of life that they kind of seem to admire from afar.
Well, I think they would if they were in control. In other words, I think they could admire what like the social credit scoring that China does, if they're the ones on the holding the mouse and controlling the keyboard. That's a system. I don't think they want it to exist in a system where they're not in control, which is.
I think that they would presume that they would be in the sophisticated elite class. Wouldn't they? They would have to think, at least whether it's true or not, separate, but they would have to believe that, like the movie, what's the one with Mel Gibson where Braveheart.
Oh yeah.
The guy sold him out because he was going to get a piece of the pie. Like he was going to be in the ruling class. Like that was the cost of him selling the guys out. So I gotta kind of.
That's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to. If China, if those four countries and whoever else ends up joining them, if they are good at selling people and saying, we're going to take over, but don't worry, you're going to be on the ins, not on the outs, like all these other people are, then yes, I think that could be true. Now the question is whether or not anybody would believe that or not. I mean, there's some people are so full of themselves that they would.
Yeah, I don't know that the populace believing it is what I would be bang, because
No, I mean the
if they
elites.
had control, they would just do it and tell the populace is what we're doing, just
Right.
like
Now,
China
would
would.
the elites believe it? The question is, would the elites believe it or not enough to sell
Yeah.
out the populace? And
Yeah.
I mean, there's enough.
So maybe that's the crux of my question. So okay, so going back to my original question, do we have any true allies? I guess maybe the crux of my question is, do we have people who have fundamental beliefs to our way of life such that they would not sell out their own population to get a piece of the pie, Braveheart style?
That's a very good question, and that's an open question. I think that's an open.
Yeah, I don't have confidence in that. I guess is where I'm.
Yeah.
I guess I'm.
No, I mean that's a well taken position, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what percentage of the elites would ultimately stand for truth, justice, and the American way if confronted.
Whoever was in charge of Australia when they were putting those people in housing, whoever that person was, I believe would absolutely sell their population out to get a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
And so if those are the people still in charge, it seems pretty bleak. So I don't know, man. And we would never know. Again, it'll be crystal clear in hindsight. We'll know all this stuff in hindsight.
Exactly.
Going in, like where the true loyalties and things like that, and all the backroom deals, we never know that stuff. But I guess my point is, for Kenny G, from my perspective, as a lay person who knows nothing about geopolitical inner workings, I would say we're on shaky ground of having leadership in other countries that would be true allies in the traditional sense, that wouldn't sell their populace out in the hopes of getting a piece of the elite pie by joining China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, whoever. Where I think
that's true.
And I mean, again, I'm not a historian to know. Maybe that was the same way it was before World War I and II. Maybe everybody still had that same belief, or maybe the way we conducted ourselves as humans being more biblical for sure, or faith-based and things like that. Maybe they feared a higher power consequence more than people now. I don't know. I don't know, but going back to the beginning of time, people sell other people out when they can get their 15 pieces of gold or whatever.
Yep. No, that's true. That's true. And I do think that's an open question. It's a danger, and it is very much an open question. I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that happy note, actually, let's not end on that happy note. We would be remiss, Dave, if we didn't talk about the funniest, from my perspective, the funniest thing that happened this week after the government shut down. And you had Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries doing their press conference and how this is wrong after they, for decades have been talking about how the Republicans are the evil ones for always shutting the government down. Okay, forget all that. It's all politics. All right. Okay. They say what they have to say in the moment. I get that. But Trump put out a video that showing Hakeem Jeffries in the sombrero and the mustache, like the cartoonish mustache. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh my goodness. Okay, no. Dave, so you have a homework assignment between now and next week.
All right.
You got to go find that video. and so he puts whoever created this video, which I'm sure Trump didn't do it, but I'm sure he just forwarded it. But I can't play it on here because there's too many curse words. Otherwise, I would just played it for you. But it's essentially Chuck Schumer saying how we have to do this stuff because nobody here likes us, and we have to immigrate, or we have to bring in people to vote for us, and hope that it takes a long time for them to hate us too, and kind of thing. But meanwhile, Hakeem Jeffries is wearing a cartoon sombrero and this cartoonish Mexican mustache kind of thing. So you got to watch that, Dave. Because
all right, that's my homework assignment.
Plenty of arguments to be made that holy crap, the president of the United States should not be doing this stuff. On the other hand, there's plenty of arguments to be made that this stuff is laughable, and it's kind of nice to get back to where we can just laugh at insanity. But so I'm curious to see.
It is I actually juxtaposition. We can't really laugh at late night comics because they're not funny, but at least we can laugh at the president because he's hilarious.
Yeah, and I'm not laughing at the president here. I'm laughing. I'm sure I'm laughing with him in this case, but. Again, people will look back. This will make the history books, I'm sure, if there are history books in 70 years in the future. Like this is how cartoonish these people were making fun of us.
Yeah,
and some of it's well earned. But I thought it was remarkable to say the least.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right. Well, as Dave said in the beginning, if you think there's something we talked about this exceptionally full of crap, or you think there's something we talked about that you believe in, we'd love to get your comments. You can do that at unsilentpodcast.com. Rumble has a great comment section. Again, we're trying to explain to future generations what it's like to live through this moment in time, as they undoubtedly look back and wonder what the hell is wrong with those people. So that's it for this week. Until next week, this is Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.